As of the release of this video, Five Nights at Freddy's is just over 10 years old. The anniversary week has just ended and there's some crazy lore discussion going on right now. This is a huge fanbase of theorists, writers, artists, and so many more, all dedicated to one thing: understanding the story of this insane franchise. So if it's taken us 10 years to reach even a simple understanding of the story, there's a very important question to be asked. Is the FNAF lore meant to be solved? Is there actually an answer to all of this madness? Well, I think I might have just found out the truth about all of FNAF's story and if there's actually a solution, so strap in because we're going way back. Today, we're solving FNAF, just not in the way you're probably used to. Let's set the stage. We all know that the lore of FNAF has always been one of the things to attract the most attention to the franchise. It's famous for being extremely complicated but charming at the same time, with an actually good underlying story regardless of how poorly communicated that story actually is. The narrative of FNAF is all about tragedy, about the harm the obsession of just one man can do to countless innocents caught in his way. How everything we do will eventually catch up to us and how sacrifices are needed to bring good to the world, even if evil resurfaces many years later. Overall, pretty solid, but the narrative is one thing. The actual timeline is something completely different. You see, in case you somehow don't know, the main problem with telling the story of FNAF isn't understanding what's going on, it's understanding when all of that stuff is going on. Because of so many different events, games, books, and so on, it's a bit overwhelming to piece everything together. Creating a FNAF timeline isn't about not knowing where the puzzle pieces are. It's basically Scott giving us a 1,000,000 piece jigsaw and saying, "There, now go put it back together," without telling us the image we're trying to create. Nothing against Scott Cawthon in that sense, of course. I think the main reason other franchises like Bendy and Poppy Playtime don't have the same appeal and long-standing charm to people is because their stories don't have that same element of mystery that FNAF does. The stories are way too well told, as funny as that sounds. FNAF itself isn't a bad story, it's just a story told badly. But that's where we come in. That's where the ID's fantasies, the Sire Squawks, the Hyperdroids and Rightoasts, the countless online communities like FNAF Twitter and Reddit, that's where we all come together and shoot our respective shots, slowly but surely putting the story of pain, suffering, cheap pizza and loss back together. But I know what you're thinking. Yeah, that's all a bunch of pretty poetic blah blah blah. Is this thing actually solvable? Well, not really. You see, while FNAF is a story, the way it's crafted makes it so that it's practically impossible to actually create a definitive timeline, because you can make 4 different interpretations of the same 8-bit minigame with the same evidence and still technically be right, even though obviously there's only one correct option. Take for example Midnight Motorist, the infamous minigame from Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, and one of my favorite subjects for debate, and one that I always bring up around any theorist I talk with. I made a video all about it, crafting a new theory called Green Afton, or that the green man outside Junior's is actually William. And while I'm honestly really proud of that theory and can't help but advertise it everywhere I go, all the comments on that video had their own opinions, and while I'm obviously used to that, what really surprised me was that as I read through them I quickly realized that all of these could be correct. You can use the same evidence to come to radically different conclusions and still have your own personal timeline or headcanon that makes sense. That's why we have debates over how many souls Golden Freddy has, or which characters were freed in FNAF 6. Although it's all there for us, the puzzle can be put together in different ways, which, now that I think about it, isn't really how puzzles work, but you know, enough puzzle metaphors, back to the video. While I do think there's an actual story behind all of this, I think it's really hard to actually correctly interpret that story, at least where we are now with the evidence we have. Which brings me to the next subject I want to bring up, one that's a bit more personal, what I like to call the story dilemma. I feel like over the last year or so, a lot of people have forgotten that FNAF is a story that's meant to be told in a way that actually makes sense. A huge example of this is the fairly recent dual process theory timeline video and its repercussions in the fanbase. This video proposed very controversial ideas like Michael being the vengeful spirit and Bite Victim actually being the 5th MCI victim, but because of the nature of the casual fans of the franchise, it was very quickly accepted by hundreds of thousands of people. Now, I'm not saying dual process theory's timeline is awful or anything, I just think that with where we are now, 10 years deep into the story, the stuff brought up in this video is extremely unlikely. I also brought this up on my Twitter, but it really feels like this timeline and what came out of it later was trying to brute force the puzzle pieces into places they just shouldn't be. Look, I'm sorry, I've really gotten carried away with this stupid puzzle stuff. Okay, I'll just Yeah. Continuing, it's important that we make a good evidence-based timeline while also retaining the storytelling aspect of the games, books, and so on, seeing themes that have been emphasized before and actually using them. Great example is when Dual Process brought up that the couch person from the aforementioned Midnight Motorist could be Elizabeth Afton. Think about it, from an evidence-based perspective, if I'm being honest, there's nothing really wrong with this. But from a narrative point of view, there's lots of questions. Why is this 3-year-old toddler watching TV at night? Why is she speaking fully articulated English? Why does this sprite look nothing like anything we've seen of Elizabeth before? This is where I believe the main issue lies, turning FNAF into a bunch of puzzle pieces that don't make up... Okay, I really can't stop making these stupid puzzle piece analogies, can I? Okay, if this happens one more time, I swear to Freddy Fazbear. Before I move on, I really do want to emphasize that I am a huge fan of Dual Process Theory in their work. While I may disagree with some points, I still think what they did for their first ever video is extremely impressive and deserves all the praise it got. I really don't want it to seem like I'm just trashing on their theory for no reason. Now that we're mostly done with the story dilemma and how the story can be interpreted in different ways, let's talk about what actually makes the story of FNAF so difficult to solve, apart from what I brought up earlier. The bane of my existence, random details. There's lots of seemingly random details that feel super important scattered throughout the game franchise that a lot of people use as evidence for their theories. But the problem is that Scott perceives his story very differently than we do. While we try to slot in every single detail from every single game, he's just telling the story he wants to tell. If there's something that he thinks isn't important anymore, he doesn't bring it up and does something else. And this is what drives me absolutely crazy. A good example of this is one of the recorded calls from FNAF 3, where Phone Guy tells us that there were multiple simultaneous springlock failures at a Freddy Fazbear sister location. Fans are still going crazy over this like 9 years later, but I really don't think it's that relevant. I think all these little details that are left scattered across the games could just be Scott having fun or leaving the slightest amount of explanation necessary for a story choice. Continuing with the springlock example, I think that line is only there to show that the springlock suits are dangerous, and that's why William Afton got springlocked after night 5. It's little things like this that we can go completely crazy over, like the sister location springlock suit that ultimately probably means nothing. So while I did say FNAF isn't solvable earlier, I didn't mean it in the sense that there's no set story. There most certainly is, it's just we nitpick way too much. If we zoom out and broaden our view and scale of this story, it will be way easier to understand what's actually going on here. I think that if we grow beyond where we are now, just look at what we have laid out here and slot the puzzle pieces where they naturally fit in, we'll get way farther than we've ever gotten before. I believe that we can solve Five Nights at Freddy's if we work together. So now I want to make the big reveal I teased at the beginning of the video. I'm making a huge ultimate timeline that will probably come out at some point this year. I'll focus more on the story of the games rather than all the little details, but it will still be filled with my usual theorist perspective on things, although without overcomplicating or, ironically enough, overthinking anything. So I hope you're excited for that, and please subscribe with notifications on if you want to see that in the future, because my conclusion for today is that FNAF is solvable. It's just pretty hard, and we have to work together. Thank you so much for watching. Happy 10th anniversary to this fantastic franchise and to our interesting, to say the least, community. It's been a wild ride being a part of this community thus far and talking with so many different fantastic people on my podcast and just everywhere else. FNAF is a franchise that's been following me pretty much ever since the first game came out, and that only stopped randomly popping up when I finally gave up and dived straight into the juicy lore and became a YouTuber. Wish all of you a very happy FNAF anniversary, but now if you don't mind, I kind of have to go. The present version of me, who should be peacefully relaxing on vacation with my friends, is currently tearing his hair out because Into the Pit probably confirmed Cassidy victim or something crazy like that. I'll be right back in a couple days with a new short, hopefully. This has been Withered Circle, the Midnight Theorist.